7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to the Marketing Essentials podcast. Our unique team helps small businesses grow by providing essential marketing expertise.
Hi, and welcome back to the Marketing Essentials podcast. My name is w.parmentier of w.parmentier Photography.
I'm Justin Kerr of Justin Kerr Design.
And I'm Alicia Piazza with Custom Marketing Solutions.
And together we make up
the Marketing Essentials team.
Huh?
Not bad.
Not bad.
One of these days we're going to do it in three-part harmony.
I have no harmony.
Okay.
I'm tone deaf.
Yeah. I couldn't carry a tune if it had a handle, so that's enough said there.
Boom,
Anywho,
boom. So what are we talking about
what are we talking about today? I'm glad you asked.
Yep.
I'm glad you asked, Alicia. Today, we are going to talk about how much should you spend for a photo shoot.
Yeah, that's a great question because, there's a lot of different photo shoot types of setups and, business photography, commercial photography.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're not talking about wedding photography and...
No, for the sake of today's
like that.
conversation, it's going to be about commercial photography. We're not going to talk about weddings or cake smashes or...
Adult cake
Adult cake smashes.
Still can't believe that's a thing.
Yes, it is. I was showing them before we started up today.
Wait, would you do my dog's birthday party?
Sure, why not?
Okay, at least
No
I'll get
problem.
that.
If your dog lives to be 16, like we said earlier, or we had talked about off mics, I guess, yeah, I'll come and do it for you.
At
I'll do it for
16,
free
he
at
deserves
16.
it, yeah.
For free, I'll do it. How's that sound?
So commercial photography.
Yes, commercial photography. So before we get started, let's just do a quick definition of what commercial photography is. Commercial photography is basically any photography that's used for sales, branding, or marketing purposes. Now, this can typically happen in studio or on location. Sometimes it's with models, sometimes it's just product photography. So there's it's a pretty big umbrella that's covered by commercial photography.
Right, because it could be headshots of your staff, it could be your product, it could be food.
Yep, could be real estate photography.
Interior of a
Buildings.
restaurant.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
interior of a restaurant. So
Good one.
fashion, jewelry, a lot of things all fall underneath
Right.
that price. So talking about how much you should spend is really kind of hard to nail down without getting really specific into what type of photography you need done.
Well, you're probably going to cover this, but I figured since you brought it up, for you to show up at a location for, say, a half-day shoot, with your equipment and ready to go, what's like the minimum investment?
We'll work for food. I'm just kidding.
It kind of depends on the food.
I was going to say, if it's a good restaurant, maybe.
Yeah.
You know.
Hot wings, I'm all over.
My half days, again, it really depends on how much prep is involved and how much editing I'm going to have on the back end.
Okay. But like what, minimum investment?
ballpark.
Like, I don't get out of bed for less than
Oh.
X.
Let's say the ballpark of around $500 to $600 for a half day to start.
Okay.
To start. Now, that can change depending on expenses and how far out it is. If it's, if I have to travel an hour and a half to get there, obviously we're going to start talking about
But that's
travel
like the
time.
starting point. $600
starting, yeah,
is
oh, yeah.
starting point. Okay.
But again, that's a really...
And that doesn't even include like editing and stuff at the other
In some
end,
cases
does
it does, but for the most part, no.
Okay.
When I'm quoting a half day to somebody, I'm typically thinking my half day is up to 4 hours, and I'm also in my head including the time that it's going to take me to edit.
Okay.
So in most cases, not always, but in most cases, if I have somebody that says to me I'm doing a real estate shoot, I know I can probably get in and out an hour and a half. That gives me a couple hours when I get home.
And the editing
to
is
edit it.
simple on the other end. It's nothing complicated.
So that's a pretty straightforward one. I did one for a mobile home park recently, and that was pretty straightforward. So I could get in a half day. There was actually two separate parks that were only about a half a mile tops from each other. Got in and out 2 hours. Got home. Was able to edit it fairly quickly, and only charged the client for a half day. Now, if it was something that was much more involved, I may quote the client as a full day, even though I'm only going to be there for a few hours, because I'll explain to them, well, this is a full day because I need to go back and do 5 or 6 hours worth of editing to get it to where you need it to
Now
be.
we're up into the thousands.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's important to educate customers and clients that there is a lot that goes on once you leave.
Sure, sure. And like we said in the previous podcast about videography, a lot of that carries over in photography also. You know, there's things to take into account when you're dealing with a photographer is they have fees for equipment, they have insurance, they got to have liability insurance if they're going onto your property in any way, shape, or form. They need to have the software, the lighting, also the experience. You know, did I mention classes already? But taking classes.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, experience is important because, you know, we've known each other a long time, and I've heard the stories over and over again. It's like, well, you're just pushing a button. It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
what you're getting for that investment is you're not just getting the equipment, and you're not getting your time, but you're getting your expertise, your experience, and all your skills.
Yes.
And, you know, okay, yeah, you push a button to take a picture, but it's knowing how to compose the shot, knowing that the lighting is right, knowing when to take that photo or when not to take the photo. There's just a lot of things in there that people don't consider.
Sure.
Right.
So that's the number one thing when you're that's going to dictate the price is going to be first off the reputation and the experience of the photographer. If they've been in business for a while and they're a good photographer and they have a reputation of being a good photographer, you're going to pay a lot more for them because you're getting, you know, it's
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, I was going to say, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, if you want Cousin Eddie to come and show up with his point and shoot and, you know, take the risk of getting, you know, stuff you can't use, then...
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I tell a story quite often about my wedding.
Oh, I've seen those pictures.
Yes, Justin seen the pictures
Holy
of my
cow.
wedding. We made the mistake, and this was... it wasn't necessarily a mistake. It was trying to do something on the cheap. We didn't have a lot of money when we got married,
Right.
and I had a family friend take the photos, and 99% of the photos came out absolutely horrible. And
Dark, they're out of focus.
and then the ones that did come through were mediocre at best.
Yeah.
So again, reputation, experience, you're going to get what you pay for. So if you're going to hire somebody straight out of college or even just somebody that got out of high school and decided to go out buy a high-end camera, you're going to get what you pay for. So that brings me to the second thing, is equipment and overhead, like I briefly touched on a few minutes ago. How much does the equipment cost? Well, a low-end professional photography setup's still going to run you $3,000 to $5,000 for a low end.
If you were to buy, what does that mean?
Okay, now I'm throwing a lot into that because you got to consider lighting, lenses, camera,
Okay.
all that stuff. So everything all together is going to start around $3,000 to $5,000.
If you were to
This is
purchase,
DIY setup.
If you do, yeah, if you're building yourself your own DIY setup,
then you have to learn how to use it.
exactly. then you got to get by the software and
I wouldn't
Take
know
classes.
Take classes.
and-
Yeah.
yeah.
The stuff would arrive, and I'd just look at it like, this is not for me.
and you guys know as well as I do, you take a class, that's great. But taking a class versus doing it are two different things.
Right.
You know, oh, I remember that in the class. I'll set up the light this way and this way, and then all of a sudden,
There's no replacement for experience.
Exactly.
You know, you can take as many classes as you want, but unless you've been out there actually doing it and dealing with all of the stuff that comes up, you know, all the X factors, the things you don't anticipate, you know, that's experience.
sure. And then the other part of the overhead is there are still photographers out there that own their own studio.
Yeah, so overhead.
They've got a lease payment to make. They've got or mortgage payment to make, or you know, they have overhead of having other employees in some cases. So
yeah.
that all factors in.
That
to how
explains
much,
why you live in a van down by the river.
it's the mystery machine, man.
Okay.
Let's leave that one a mystery. So anyway, so equipment overhead. Next thing is, you know, I touched on this earlier, is how complex is the actual photo shoot? A product shoot is probably a lot less complicated and can be done a little bit more inexpensively than a shoot where you're taking, I don't know, I'm thinking, like, say, a fashion designer. They want to have their clothes shown. Well, they're going to have to go hire a model. Then they're going to hire an on-location team,
A stylist,
a stylist, a makeup artist. Now you throw all that stuff in. That all adds into the cost of a photo shoot. People don't think about that. They just, again, they go back to what you said earlier. Oh, you just push a button. Yeah, great. I wish it was that easy, you know? This little magic box.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a pet peeve of mine just because you mentioned it already about the thing?
I don't think I'll be able to stop
No,
you.
you're
but
not
go
going to stop
ahead,
me. I love the people they mean well, but they'll come up to me and they'll look at the camera that I'm shooting with, or they'll during a photo shoot. Oh, you got X camera. You got that. That must take great pictures. as if the camera has.
The camera's doing all the work.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just standing there
Does it
pressing the button.
himself, Yeah.
It's a magic box.
Walks there.
I just made.
Yeah. When I get a photo shoot, I just tell the camera, okay, go out there and take some great pictures. I'll be here at home.
Yeah.
When
That'd
you're
be
done.
like you as a designer, somebody come to you and going, "Boy, Photoshop works well for you."
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
All on its own, right? Yeah.
So
Why don't
anyway,
you just get up in the morning, Alicia, and go, okay, Facebook, work your magic.
I do. I have a magic button. I have a wand like Harry Potter. When I say a spell over my laptop, Facebook just does its thing. I call
Sweet.
Mark Zuckerberg sometimes. I just tell him, make Facebook work for me.
Oh, man. I'd
great.
like to have a direct line to Mark Zuckerberg.
that'd be nice, huh?
Yeah, that's how it
Okay,
works, guys. Marketing in a nutshell.
Thanks
Thanks for tuning in. All right.
So let's break it down again. Now, you asked a little while ago about day rates. So a typical day rate out there is going to be anywhere from, for a half day, is going to be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 just to start for a basic package.
Okay.
Full days typically going to be 800 to 1,800. It's a little bit higher end because they put a full day into it. Now, of course, the extra expenses that you, like I said already, models, permits, makeup artists, props, specialties,
Oh,
specialty cameras.
insurance. Is that in there too?
Oh yeah, insurance is part of that also.
Okay.
But the people don't think about is permits too. If you're doing an on location shoot, a lot of towns now are starting to require that you have to have a permit. To
Really?
Do this. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
important because you can get in trouble and
Yeah.
then your whole shoot's shut down for the day.
Yeah. How would you like to?
The whole shoot is shot?
Yes, the shoot is shot.
I mean, can you imagine this? Okay, so you hire somebody that doesn't know that, right? And you hire a photographer. You bring in the makeup artist. You bring in the hairstylist. You bring in the clothing designer. You bring in Justin making all kinds of noise.
I'm sorry.
But you bring in the designer. You bring in. I missed one other thing. There was one other thing that I was missing before I was
Whole bunch of stuff.
distracted. But anyway,
There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff, guys.
and then all of a sudden, somebody comes. A officer comes in and goes, "Hey, you got to stop."
You don't have permission to shoot here.
Yeah.
Oh,
so you've
that's
just
it.
and getting a permit isn't like you just go to an office and go, "I want the permit." Boom, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
It may take a day or two. So now you've lost that production time.
Wow. Okay.
So again, things people don't think about when they're in the process of, doing commercial photography or trying to figure out how much it's going to cost.
Right.
Right.
So when they
Now-
get a bill that it's going to be $2,500 for a shoot,
Well, that everything that goes into that, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are your rates any different shooting with your camera versus shooting with a drone?
not typically the drone's going to be a little bit more expensive because of insurance is a little bit more expensive.
Oh, okay.
And also the upkeep on the drone is a little bit higher maintenance.
So given that, so let's say your half day rate is for a particular shoot, with everything considered. Let's say it's $1,000, right? That's for what would it be for a drone for the same shoot?
Probably 15 to 2,000.
Okay,
in that
that's just to
area.
cover the overhead of the equipment and the insurance.
The insurance alone is crazy on drones because you basically got a giant lawnmower in the
Yeah.
or a small lawnmower, or a weed whacker in the air.
There's a lot of liability there. I mean,
Yeah.
that thing comes down on property or
someone.
somebody. Yeah.
Well, on top of that, okay, so now you get the insurance, and then also don't bear in mind that I, as a drone pilot, have to keep up my certification.
Right.
So I have to constantly be testing. Well, every 2 years you have to take a test that says you know how to fly basically an unmanned aircraft. It's
wow.
it's one step below flying a recreational aircraft, actually sitting in a. In
I
an
think
airplane.
people think of it as like a remote control car in the sky, and they're like, "No, this could be dangerous."
Yeah,
you know,
it
it's
can be.
more than a little
Well, you have to have
like a toy.
You
It's
have to
not.
have FAA,
FAA
clearance.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Permits to fly in certain areas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And on top of that, like I said, you have to have the FAA license too, because that's the other thing people don't think about when on the photography or the videography end. Oh, I'll just get somebody with a drone, because I want to have an aerial photo. Well, great. If you get caught trying to make money off of a drone without having that FAA license, you're looking at huge fines.
Really?
Not to mention if you crash into somebody without insurance.
What if you crash into like a building or something too? You know?
This is a little bit of a side note, but it actually has, as an FAA pilot, if I crash into the side of a building and cause over $400 in damage, I actually have to report it as if it was an airline accident
Wow.
That
to
sounds
the
scary.
FAA. Yeah. I'm sure it is. I haven't had to do one yet, thankfully.
All that drone test
Yeah.
that you have to take, the flying test.
Well, but yeah, so there's a lot involved in it. The studying alone took me a month to take the test.
Wow.
I don't get paid for that. That's stuff that I have.
Right.
I mean, I
But
have
when
to
you
recuperate
show up on a
some.
job, the person that hired you can rest assured that you're licensed,
Mm-hmm.
you're insured, you have experience, you know what you're doing. You're not just some guy off the street with a drone.
Correct.
And these are things like you hire professionals to come into your house, and it's very common to ask if they're licensed, insured, or bonded, whatever it is.
Right.
Because
If you hire a plumber, you want all those things.
yeah,
Yeah,
you don't
but you'd be
want water
surprised.
running through your house and walls falling down.
You'd be surprised how many people think, I'll just buy a drone and throw it up in the air and I can do it myself. That is one area where I absolutely would tell, we can tell people, go ahead and build your own website. There's ways you can go ahead and do it yourself.
Typically, nobody dies if you build your own website.
Exactly. Or even,
I say
Targeting
typically.
goes wrong.
I mean, even I've talked about how to do it yourself photography
Right.
in previous episodes we've done. But I would never tell somebody to do it yourself drone because there's just too much danger involved.
It
Like you
is,
said,
yeah.
somebody could die.
Risk factor.
Or, people have gotten stitches from trying to catch a drone the wrong way because those blades will cut you.
Catch a drone? Why would you want to catch a drone?
There are some situations you actually have to catch a drone, but that's another story.
Oh,
I'll tell you.
Facebook. We'll do a Facebook Live on that.
I have actually successfully caught it twice.
Oh, really?
It would have been 3, but I lost a finger there.
Okay.
No, I actually have caught it twice successfully, but that's another
I'd
story.
like to save it from going over.
I was in a situation where it wasn't going to land well because there was tall grass that I was near, and I didn't really want it to land in the grass.
so you just went out and grabbed it.
There's a trick to doing it. If you know how to do it, there's a way to
Okay.
do it. But
We'll get a Facebook Live of Bill doing
yeah,
that.
we will. Yeah, there you go.
Actually, that would be a cool Facebook Live as a little drone demonstration.
Yeah,
That would
I could do
be,
that. Absolutely, that'd be fun. And actually, there's a way through. I'm getting way off track here, but there is a way through the drone software to actually do a Facebook Live with the drone.
Oh, that would be cool.
Wow.
We can't do any sound with it. We'd have to have sound separate, but that's a story. Anyway, so
So
getting back to
you were talking about day rates. And
So yeah, day
things
rates
like that.
are obviously going to change a little bit depending on the complexity and what type of photography is actually being done. But on average, 500 to 1,000 to start for a half day, 800 to 1,800 for a full day. Again, a lot of factors that go into that. Another way that commercial photography can also be charged is also as a per project pricing. Typically, that'll work in specific things. Social media imagery is one of the big ways that happens. You may hire me to go in and take let's use a restaurant, for example. I may come in to photograph a couple of dishes for your menu. That I may figure out a deal with you during the course of that to say, okay, the imagery is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of $400 to $600. That is going to include the time for the photography, travel time for me to get there, plus any photo retouching I'm going to do on the opposite end. So that's all kind of figured in when I give that package price.
Now, why would you do a package or a project pricing versus a day rate or a half day rate for a certain project?
There's not a huge difference. Typically, I tend to lean more on the side of day rates because if you go over because of something that the client didn't realize was going to happen, you have that leeway to be able to extend it to a full day. With a per project pricing, you got to pretty much have everything nailed down and ready to go.
So is it an advantage for the customer then to get maybe a slightly lower price point on a project basis versus a day rate?
Sometimes, but I believe that a lot of photographers who are going to use the per project pricing are going to bring that price up a little bit higher, just to kind of pad for the fact that they might have to have something always comes up.
Okay.
So you want to prepare as much. I'm not saying that they're doing anything unethical.
No, they're just compensating for their time.
They need to make sure, hey,
So-
if this comes up or that comes up.
So maybe project pricing would be good if a client had a fixed budget and said, look, I've got $3,000 to spend on this photo shoot. What can you do for me for $3,000?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good way to do it. Now, lifestyle photography is another type of photography where you're using models. It may be for a pair of sneakers or fashion or perfume, whatever.
Right.
That type of. Now you got to take into account that they're going to be looking at the models. You got to pay the models for their time. You got to pay for the makeup artists. You have to pay, like we talked about,
Stylists. Yeah.
stylists. So you're jumping up a lifestyle photography shoot to $2,100, $5,000.
Wow.
Really, it's hard for me to tell you an exact price because
Yeah.
it all depends on how much the stylist costs, how much.
Right.
There's a lot of factors into it.
Is that, I mean, so when you hire models out of an agency, do they supply makeup artists or stylists, or do you have to
very
go
rarely.
find your own? or-
Usually that's a separate cost.
Oh.
It's rare that a model will bring their own because they don't know how the makeup needs to be done for that specific shoot.
Yeah.
Makeup. I'm not a makeup expert in any way, shape, or form, but different styles of
tell.
makeups give. You think? But different types of makeup, obviously, for different moods.
Yeah.
You picture a woman going out for a night on the town; she's gonna look very differently made up than a photo shoot where you're showing somebody in a kitchen.
Yeah, or a day at the beach.
or a day at the
whatever.
beach. So
Yeah.
Is
All right.
there like a photography setup or type of project that's really common for businesses? Like, what do you find they usually need, or it varies?
it really depends on what they're trying to use the photography for. Are they using it for print material? Are they using it for social media? Are they using it for their website? Are they trying to do something where they're going to do a little bit of all three? It really, really depends. So to say that there's one specific, it's hard to really say that.
Gotcha.
So, and obviously, a lot of the stuff can cross over. If that helps. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
I
but-
wanted to do some headshots and get models for my business.
Sure,
That
go
doesn't
for it.
necessarily work though, because if you do a headshot, it should be you, right?
Oh, so you want to model a headshot of a model? Hey, we can do that. There's a cost behind everything, but
Then when I show up, they're like, "You don't." Look like
I'm
the girl in the
replacing my
picture."
headshot with a picture of Tom Hiddleston.
go with that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that brings up the other part. Photo retouching can also range wildly.
Oh, that's
Okay.
yeah, that's
Bill's looking right at me going, $3,000 right off the bat.
That's for the first hour.
That's just for the first hour, yeah.
I couldn't find a chisel. No, but seriously, I mean, there's a big difference between photoshopping out a few blemishes versus doing a full airbrushing. I guess
Right.
that's what they would have called it in the old days, is airbrushing.
Well, I remember you showing me a photo that you took, and you had you were on location, and you had a black backdrop that it was for like an event, a social event, so people would get together and do a group shot. But you had anticipated that the groups would be like maybe 4, 5, 6 people. Well, this 18 people showed up in a group, and the people on the edges went beyond the backdrop.
Yep.
So you had to actually go in and create more backdrop behind the people that were outside that frame.
Yeah, that goes a little beyond basic edits at that point.
So that's, but you needed to do that in order to submit the photo and have everybody be happy with it. But that took time
Sure,
to do that.
Yep, absolutely, and it's one of those things that people don't necessarily think about. It's like, well, we're having an event, so you're going to come do photography. Well, what type of photography? How many people?
Right.
Event photography is like a total different animal on the commercial end of it, because those typically you'll see those go for a day rate.
Okay. So like conferences,
Yeah.
Other corporate events, like cocktail parties and stuff like that, or festivals.
Yeah, typically as a photographer, I'm going into those thinking I'm going to be doing very little on the editing side. Primarily because, unless you're dealing with something like the situation you were just talking about.
That was set up, yeah.
But for the most part, there's really not a whole lot of editing. Basic edits.
Right.
For those types of events, though, like here's a really great point. You had said before, for your wedding, you didn't get it right. An event is one time. So
Sure,
instead
same
of thinking
thing.
about how much it's going to cost you to get help there that knows what they're doing, think about how much it's going to cost you if you mess up and you don't get the right people there.
Or you don't get any shots at all.
Yeah.
If they all look horrible, now you've got no marketing materials for later on down the line.
Right.
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 Because let's face it, the reason that most event coordinators want photos taken is so that they can market in the future, so they can
For the next event.
For the next event.
Yeah,
Or if you were
exactly.
holding a gala or a charity event, these are all things that need to be showcased really, really well for businesses.
Yeah. And
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Can't redo it.
nope.
No.
Yeah, it'd be kind of hard. It'd be very expensive to restage something like that.
You'd have,
I need 1,000 extras, please.
Uh,
So anyway, I think we touched on anything. If there was any other questions, did I miss anything?
I mean, there's a lot to talk about on this,
Yeah, I could
on
make-
this topic, but I think you've covered most of it, talking about rates and what goes into the process of a photo shoot. You know, the
A good
prep on
photo
the,
shoot,
Yeah.
yeah.
A good one, a professional one. So the prep on the front end, and then the actual shooting, and then the post.
There is one thing that I do want to mention before I forget. You will run into a lot of professional photographers. They usually have a minimum cost. So they may not, some people, I've actually had people in the past where, your half-day rate is $600. So if I for up to 4 hours. So that's $150 an hour. I'll pay you for 1 hour for $150. No, that's not how it works. It's like, you're only on my site for an hour.
Yeah.
It's like if you go to the grocery store and like break like a
Uh,
candy bar in half, and you're like, oh, I only want to play.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Please tell me you haven't done that
So,
No, I just eat the whole thing.
photographer's minimum weight.
before I leave the store.
Nice. So,
That's horrible.
Okay.
so photographers' minimum weight rates will vary, but some will go as little as $100. There are some that won't even get out of bed unless they're making $400 or $500 for a shot.
Well, I mean, it's your time.
Yeah.
And if someone is booking you for a project, then they're expecting you to show up. So I absolutely can understand why there'd be a minimum rate there. Now, what about cancellations? So someone schedules you for a photo shoot, and they decide last minute, I don't want to do this. Do they still have to put out the minimum rate?
Typically, there is a retainer that is charged. Most photographers in the industry will charge anywhere from 25 to 50% of the total cost as a retainer.
Okay.
That basically holds the spot for you for that date. Now, obviously, if it's a rain day and stuff like that, it's something totally
Yeah, I'm
different.
not talking about things beyond their control, but they decide, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, typically, they'll set a retainer of some sort, and it's called a retainer because you don't get it back if things go south.
And that's a fairly industry standard?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there are some guys that don't work on retainers that are just, okay with the possibility that things could fall through. But when you start to get busy as a photographer, you lose a day's pay because somebody cancels last minute.
You could have had another client.
You've lost any chance of getting another
Could have
client.
booked somebody else, yeah.
So I mean, it's only common courtesy, but I will also say that there are situations that can change that. Like, say for instance, I charge you a half-day rate, and you pay half of that as a retainer, and all of a sudden 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out, you tell me I got to cancel because it's just the budget's not there right now, whatever the case may be. I'm more likely to say, okay, I've got enough time to recuperate that and rebook somebody. I'm okay with that. But if you come to me 10 days before, I may say no to you. Usually in the contract, it'll say when the retainer kicks in. So, and that'll also vary by photographer. So,
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
so.
Well, a lot of great information. Hopefully, our listeners now understand why things cost as much as they do
Sure.
for photography, because if you want professional photography, there's a lot that goes into it.
If you're looking for somebody, I'm available. Shameless plug.
Yep. w.parmentier Photography. You can find them online.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on our website too.
Yeah, we have all of our different links on the website, right?
I think so. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Speaking of which, we need to
Close up,
This is
yes.
our shameless plug time of day. So we'd like to thank our venue host, Rooms and Works. It is a co-working and living space in Providence, Rhode Island, and you can find them online at roomsandworks.com.
Great place.
Also, check out our team, the Marketing Essentials team, online at marketingesentialsteam.com. Look us up on Facebook, and also,
The Little Rhody Group.
yeah, you want to talk about the little Rhody group?
Yeah, the
though?
Little Rhody marketing group. It's basically a group that we've put together on Facebook for people who are either struggling or want to learn a little bit more about marketing and are looking to support each other. It's a support group. So,
Yes.
support group. I know it always sounds kind of weird, like, hi, I'm a recovering marketer.
Honestly, some days I feel like I need support.
Yeah, this is true.
It definitely serves that purpose, but it's also just a great resource for small businesses that
Sure.
are looking to get some marketing expertise and some tips, and also for marketers to kind of support each other and share their victories and their challenges.
Frustrations. You can rant.
And last but not least, we do this podcast because we enjoy giving out material for free. And if you want to hear more of our podcasts, check us out on iTunes. Subscribe to our iTunes. We're the Marketing Essentials team on iTunes. And with that, I think we're done for this podcast.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.